When you're starting in the hobby, one of the first questions that you get is, should I start digital or should I start analog? When you are going digital, you have to choose, or one of the first choices is to choose the DJI goggles. If you're going analog, there are a few companies creating very good goggles. One of them, and one of the most famous one, is Fat Shark. And you can have, even inside Fat Shark, you have 3 or 4 different options. So what I'm going to try to do right now is to give you some arguments to see which way is better for you to go. Should you start with analog or should you start directly with digital? Many things that going analog is going to be cheaper, and there is some true around that. But I'm going to give you some arguments to see if it's really cheaper to go fully analog compared to digital. Let me start with the prices of the different goggles. I'm not gonna go into a huge list, but I'm going to talk about maybe like the flagship of analog versus digital. If we're talking about digital, of course we have to talk about the DJI goggles. Right now you find the version 2 of these goggles, which comes with a battery included, and they cost around $630. If on the other hand you're thinking about the highest level of analog goggles, which are the Fat Shark HD02, you're talking about $510 just for the goggles. But these goggles, they don't have a receiver. You have to add an extra receiver. And if you go with something like the Immersive RC Rapid Fire, that one is gonna cost you $170 more. So in total, if you're going with the best that you can on the analog side, you're going to be paying even more than if you buy a DJI FPV goggle. Something around $680 versus $630. Of course, you don't have to start with the best ones of the analog. You can start with something cheaper, like for example the Fat Shark Scout, which cost only around $220. That's much cheaper and a very good option if you're starting in the hobby. But then start thinking about this. Let's say you start in the hobby, you like what you're doing and you want to move forward. You want to upgrade yourself to better goggles, to something that it's much better. Then you have to start thinking about the second-hand price of whatever you have bought. And it's not going to be easier to sell something very low on the analog side compared to if you have to sell, for example, the DJI FPV goggles. So at that moment, think about this. If you have the money and you start directly with digital and you buy it, and after a month or something, you decide to sell it, the price of the FPV, the DJI FPV goggles that you're gonna get back is going to be probably much better than if you try to sell your Scouts on the second-hand market. At this point you start saying, okay, there is an investment that I have to do. If I don't like it, if I'm not 100% sure about the hobby, I might want to sell it back. Which one can give me better price for what I pay? If we keep thinking about that line, then you might say, okay, maybe it's better to invest on analog but something better. And then we come back to what I was mentioning about the HD02. You have a much better price, you have also much better goggles, you have also a better second-hand value, but now you are kind of in the same level as the DJI goggles if you are starting. The second point that we're going to talk about is quality, video quality specifically. Once that you try digital and you start seeing that high definition image that you get on the goggles and the resolution, and you can see these small branches when you're flying, your flying experience changed completely. Even if you can say that on digital you have a bigger delay from the time that the image is produced to the time that you actually see it than in analog, it's still the quality of the video, it's amazing. And if you have tried FPV analog, once you try the digital goggles, it's difficult to go back to analog, to be honest. But analog has its place. If you think about, for example, if you like the idea of flying tiny whoops are not available yet, or maybe there's not that many in digital. So you want to, if that's your area, if that's what you want to fly, most probably you still have to think about analog. There is also a lot of people that likes to fly analog if they're flying long distance. Probably you can have certain advantage about weight that you have with your VTX and the other parts, but it's a little bit up to you. One thing that is true is that analog has a lot more options when it comes to VTX and cameras. That is not always a good thing, because when you have more options, especially if you are new in the hobby, you have a lot more decisions to take, you have a lot more to compare. You have no idea probably what you're comparing from one camera to the other, or the same with the VTX. You might not even know exactly what a VTX is, and you have to take all these decisions. Which one should I choose? There are 50 different cards that I can choose from. What should I be looking for? In the digital world, you have kind of only two choices, Air Unit or Vista. They are pretty similar. Most of the time you choose the one that is available, and that's it. In the long range, buying VTXs and camera analog is much cheaper than buying the Air Unit or the Vista in digital. So the more drones that you have, the cheaper analog is going to become. That's for sure. But again, in my opinion, at the end of the road, you will always go to digital. The question is, how should I start if I'm starting in the hobby? And it's something, in my opinion, about how do you want to invest your money? How sure you want to be of the amount that you're going to invest is going to give you the best results possible. I started analog myself, and I bought my HDO2, my rapid fire, and then after 6-7 months that I bought it, I got my DJI goggles. After I got the DJI goggles, I haven't used that much the analog setup, and I feel a little bit bad that I put so much money on the analog when the digital, it's this good, and I'm very happy using it. When we're talking about quality of the video, you also have to think about that if you are using analog, you have a big range of different cameras, and inside those cameras you're going to have very different qualities. So that's also going to take you some time to research, find out which one works better for you, depending on the conditions that you're flying and all these kind of things. And that's also money that you're gonna have to spend doing the whole research in order to find the right camera for what you want. On the other side, on digital, there is only 2 or 3 cameras. The Nebula Nano, which is not good, and that's easy to get out of the equation. The Nebula Pro, which is very good but impossible to find, and then the DJI Vista, or the new name of the Cadex that comes with the Air Unit. At the end of the day, if someone that is new in the hobby comes to ask me what should I do, my answer is, if you have the money, go digital. If you are interested on flying with the best experience, long range, freestyle, those ones are available on digital. The drones are wonderful. The image quality is perfect. If you are thinking about flying tiny whoops, indoor racing, or racing in general, then analog is what you should be looking at. But you see a very big difference here. If you are into racing, tiny whoops, analog is your thing. If you are into freestyle, long range, cinematic, digital is where you want to start. If money is the problem to start in the hobby, or you are not 100% sure about if you're gonna like it or not, think a little bit before you buy, because again, whatever you invest in the beginning might be that you don't get any return out of it. It might be better to invest a little bit more money and that you can sell it later than to buy something that is cheaper that you will never be able to sell. Think a little bit about it, take your own decision, Let me know what you do in the comments down below, and hope that this video works for you and helps you buy whatever you want to buy for starting this hobby. Thank you for watching, and see you soon.